I speak a lot about the state of men on this channel. That's because I believe healthy men create healthy nations and civilizations. And it seems to me that the West is struggling in regard to this somewhat. The West has been a bit of a victim of its own success in many ways. Our ancestors did such a good job in creating a stable, technologically advanced state that modern men tend to lack the nourishing existential challenges that once made men great. So men these days tend to find themselves complacent in a convenience culture with office jobs and sport at the weekend. It's nice, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't really get the heart and the soul going. So in a sense, the men of modernity have been demoralised and neutered to an extent, and this has been made worse still by feminism, which tends to conceptualise traditional masculine qualities such as authoritative behaviour, aggression and drive as pathological. In this day and age, men are told, especially young men, that the best thing they can be is more like a woman, that is, compassionate and caring and so on. Now don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with compassion per se. I can sympathise with some guy if he feels traumatised or depressed or whatever and he's afraid to say so. However, if all you have is compassion and you don't have strength and an ability to deal with harsh truths to balance it out, you end up just with a society of cowards. Given the West has stigmatised masculinity to such an extent, it means we don't have many male elders to guide the young anymore. That means it's hard for them to step into manhood in an authentic way, and it stunts their growth. They remain kidults. I got the idea to make this video when I saw some examples of it on social media. Here's one guy who looks in his 20s opening a Christmas present. Now, this video went viral because the cat attacks the man at the end. It's probably because he's screaming like an injured bird. But you do wonder with young men like this, how are you going to deal with the real world when you act like a 5-year-old at Christmas? Here's another example. This man seems to be in his 40s or something close to that. Now this guy goes viral because he watches cartoons or movies based on cartoons like Superman, as you can see on his t-shirt, and he reacts to them all by crying and getting emotional.
My face hurts. Yes!
Now, I guess the nicest thing I can say about this is at least he seems to be having a fun time, although I dare say he might not be having a fun time outside of these videos, because a man who acts this way, it's kind of obvious he's going to struggle to get a wife, to become a father, and if he was a father, to be a responsible one. Now, I don't want to be mean to the guy, but imagine if this was your son. You'd be like, come on, John, it's time to put the Superman videos down and do a bit more with your life. You're better than this. But soppy emotional behaviour tends to go down very well these days. People like to say they're happy, who are they hurting, you're just a killjoy. However, when I see things like this on your screen, I just think, how can you break down that much on your wedding day? You're supposed to be a symbol of stability, someone who can take your wife through hard emotional storms, not snotty crying before you've even got to the vows. Again, I don't mean to be horrible to the guy. I'm sure he's a nice fella, and I can understand a dignified tear on your wedding day, but this emotional incontinence seems to be a problem in our era. I guess that's why the millennial generation came up with this new word, adulting. It basically means to be an adult and behave like an adult. Now, this disavowal of some young men to step into their true masculine nature is like an offence against nature. It means our spiritual balance is off, culturally speaking, and that also means that a shadow side is going to form, and that's well represented in figures like Andrew Tate and their hyper-masculinity. Now, as I've said before, I can understand why young men are so drawn to someone like Andrew Tate. They've never had a figure like that in their lives who motivates them, who tells them that they can become something. On top of that, he's funny, he's very confident, and he's got lots of cars and women, which tends to be popular with youngsters who don't have those things as well. But of course, there are the downsides to Tate as well. He's been on videos stating how he used to scam men out of tens of thousands of pounds by pretending to be attractive Russian women. Further to that, the hypermasculinity can go a bit far, and he is prone to making quite odd statements like this. Here's a recent tweet of his where he states white people are doomed to fail because they're the only race that cares what women think and say. The result is liberalism, LGBTQ and birth rate declines. Okay, unorthodox take, and keep an open mind to where he's going with this. But then shortly after this he states white men will never ever win because you're the only race women can control. Women can't control brown or black men. It's why they chase us, to be honest. They like it. Every white woman alive fantasizes about a black man. Now, this is typical Andrew Tate. It's quite brash, it's bold, and it's got some wild claims in there. But we have to remember, most of Andrew Tate's audience, the vast majority, is young, white, Western men. And how do they receive such messaging? Well, in essence, the messaging Tate is giving youngsters here is no different from the messaging they get from the woke left. That is, white people are bad, they're not as good as other races, to be better they need to be more like them and try and understand how they see the world, then they might get closer to being better people. There's also the problem that what Tate is saying is actually untrue. I think we probably all inherently knew that anyway, but there is research to back that up as well. You can see that on your screen in a handy graph right now. In the top left corner, we have women responding to men on dating apps, and we can see that white men get the highest response rate of every group other than black women, who tend to go for black men. So it would seem Andrew Tate isn't the answer to the epidemic of soft men in the Western world. If you ask me, the answer would be to return back to our tradition, where we have male elders in key arenas where men can go and learn. That includes scout groups, football teams, school, you name it. But we have the exact opposite of that now. Key arenas for male development are now ruled by women, guardian reading feminist types at that. But perhaps the worst part of our failure of young men is how male-only spaces have been destroyed. That's why football was once a very special experience between father and son. They both go to a game, engage in what is essentially a proto-war, and try and learn the traditional values therein. Of course, in an era of inclusion and tolerance, all of that's gone now, and we don't even realise the mistakes we're making. However, this is something I want to work more towards in 2025. I think male communities are extremely important for men to make sense of life, themselves and their culture. It's something I'm aiming to build on the side of this channel and in the exclusive area I'm going to release in about, a week's time. Anyway, these are just my thoughts. Do let me know what you think down below. Do consider subscribing to the channel if you're new.